This is Entering Tyngsborough, a podcast from the town of Tyngsborough on all things happening in town government and the community. I'm Roni Camille, and thanks for being here. We're having candid conversations on what's happening here in town. On this episode, we talk to Jake Zwicker, our town engineer, and Emilie Brush, conservation director, about the town's stormwater management. But first, here are a few things that you should know. Tuesday, May 7th, is the 215th annual and special town meeting. It's happening at 7 p.m. over at the elementary school on Westford Road. Now, everything that you should know about town meeting, the proposed budget, and all business matters is available on the town's website, and that's tyngsboroughma.gov. The Sustainability Committee will host a Zero Waste Day on Saturday, May 11th from 9 a.m. till noon over at the elementary school parking lot on Westford Road. It's an opportunity for residents to get rid of materials that they don't need and keep them out of the waste stream. For more information, you can visit the Sustainability Committee page on Facebook at Sustainable Tyngsborough. And lastly, help us close the digital divide at an upcoming charrette. Join the Middlesex County of Governments and Tyngsborough officials on May 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Old Town Hall on Kendall Road for a digital equity charrette to help improve resident access to the internet and other digital tools. This session will help the community compete for state and federal grants. Now, on to the podcast.
Hi, I'm Jacob Zwicker. I'm the town engineer.
Hi, my name is Emilie Brush, and I'm the Conservation Director for the town of Tyngsborough.
Jacob, Emilie, thanks so much for joining us on this edition of Entering Tyngsborough. So first and foremost, for the residents or whomever is listening or watching us, Jacob, what exactly is a town engineer? What exactly do you do?
All right, that's a good question, Roni. I'm in charge of all the infrastructure within the town's right-of-way, so that includes roadways, drainage, sidewalks, curbing, all that kind of stuff. I also am involved in some special projects, for example, like the police station parking lot that's going to be starting up next week, as well as overseeing some private development.
And Emilie, we've talked before, but explain to us, what exactly is the role of the conservation director?
So the Conservation Director not only manages the conservation parcels in the town of Tyngsborough, but the Conservation Director also implements, regulates, and permits projects under the Wetlands Protection Act, which is a state regulation, and the Town Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Stormwater Bylaw, and Aerator Bylaw.
And so the both of your offices kind of coordinate basically stormwater management in town. What exactly is stormwater for, the layman person that may not know what it is?
I can answer that. Stormwater is essentially just overland runoff from precipitation. That includes rain, snow melt, and different things like that.
And why is it so important that we're managing, the source of the stormwater in town?
It's important because, like you've probably seen in the past year, we've been getting a lot more intense rain events, which is causing some damage to our infrastructure, roadways, even private property as well. So it's important to help mitigate that, but it's also important to make sure that the runoff is clean before it enters into our rivers, lakes, and streams. Because back in 1972, they passed what is called the Clean Water Act, and that was basically just some basic structure to help reduce the amount of pollutants entering into the stormwater. So right now, that has just been expanded, and we're just doing that much more to help make sure that our runoff is clean before it enters the Merrimack.
So if water were to go down you're driving down the road, you see one of those storm drains, it doesn't go down into the sewer to be recycled, right? It goes back into our water stream, basically into the river?
Yeah, so essentially in some cases, that might just go right to the catch basin and then out a pipe directly into either the Merrimack or, a wetland area, which eventually makes its way to the Merrimack through different streams throughout town.
I'm going to pause because somebody's come in, and do you mind taking one of those signs and putting it on the door, please? Thanks. Sorry about that, guys. So has there been instances with stormwater kind of management where you guys have encountered like things that are besides water going into the water system?
I can, Emilie, have you run into any instances?
Yeah, so sometimes depending if the catch basin gets everything, sometimes sediment, so any sand, dirt that comes off the road sometimes ends up going into the resource area. If people dump certain things down it, like oil or trash, any other type of liquid that you could possibly think of dumping on the ground sometimes ends up in the catch basins, which then doesn't get filtered out and ends up in our resource areas. So really anything that comes off the road that isn't filtered through the catch basin could end up in the resource area or its final endpoint.
And the both of you have kind of a dual role managing this, right? So Jake, you're kind of out in the field with the folks from the highway department, and Emilie, you're kind of the in-house, right? Kind of managing the permits and all that. Jake, when you're out in the field with the guys from the highway department, what are you guys encountering with the various catch basins and storm drains and etc.?
At least with the highway department, we're kind of focusing on repairs and making improvements to the existing stormwater system. I also work with making sure that we maintain our NIPD's permit compliance. So I work with a consultant to do outfall screening of various outfalls throughout town to check for pollutants, such as, different surfactants. We also make sure that there's no cross contamination with sewer. We also check for, chlorine, sediment, and that type of stuff. And honestly, since we've been doing it, we haven't actually had any flags. So Tyngsborough's looking good.
That's good. When it comes to educating the public, what are some of your challenges and kind of, even though things are well, teaching people about kind of managing our, infrastructure or when it comes to stormwater?
I can take this one. So education outreach always has its downfall. I mean, a lot of times, no matter how much you send flyers or when fairs or presentations come around and you try to educate the residents, sometimes it doesn't quite get through to them. So I know that the town, when you first become a resident, you get a nice flyer put together by the sustainability committee, I think. And it kind of explains the basics of your duties to maintain stormwater and how to help with the infrastructure. But other than that, it is a challenge. And everybody kind of has to do their part in order to kind of keep everything working properly.
So what are some things that residents should be doing or not doing?
So as a resident, definitely one thing you should be doing is if you had like a catch basin at the edge of your driveway that's on the road, kind of keeping an eye on it. I know not everybody does it, but if there were leaves on top of it or debris around it, definitely cleaning it out because it definitely helps the highway guys. Because I do know they go around and clean around the grate and in the catch basin twice a year. But kind of doing your own due diligence of keeping it clean. Also kind of managing the amount of water that leaves your property also is a big help with managing stormwater. And then making sure that when you do clean your yard during the fall, all the leaves and debris don't end up either in the street blocking the catch basins or in culverts nearby if you have one by your property, because that ends up backing up all the flowage of stormwater into our stormwater infrastructure, like the catch basins and culverts, which can cause backup further down the road, or water just doesn't reach it, and then we have flooding in those properties.
Jake, your office recently sent out a flyer about stormwater, and one of the things that I saw was a term called eutrophication.
Oh, eutrophication.
Eutrophication. To the expert, to the both of you, what exactly is that? And it just sounded bad to me. So how do we prevent that from happening?
So I don't know if you want to take this one or I can, Emily.
I got it. So eutrophication is basically an excessive amount of nutrients. So usually it's either nitrogen or phosphorus that comes from either pollution such as wastewater from industries or municipal sewer, or non-point pollution, which could be like irrigation water, runoff from driveways containing fertilizer, etc. And basically what ends up happening is it gets into our environment and protective resource areas like rivers and ponds and streams, and it basically causes algae blooms because it causes an excessive amount of nutrients in an area that doesn't have a lot of nutrients, and then that nutrients creates algae, which then removes oxygen from the water, so it ends up becoming super harmful, more to the plant life and fish life, and sometimes it gets to the point that like lakes and ponds have to end up closing certain beaches because it ends up becoming too much and harmful to humans as well.
Okay. Is there anything else that you guys want to add to the people of Tyngsborough? The one thing that they should know before we wrap up?
Well, to help mitigate eutrophication, that flyer did list a bunch of lawn care tips, so such as mulching your grass clippings, using low phosphorus fertilizer, and then you can also utilize the town's compost site located on Bryant's Lane for all your leaf and other yard debris.
All right. Fantastic. Emilie Brush, Conservation Director for the town of Tyngsborough. Jacob Zwicker, Town Engineer for the town of Tyngsborough. Thanks so much for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all the time that we have today on the Entering Tyngsborough podcast. If you want to learn more about your town's government, visit the town of Tyngsborough's website at tyngsboroughma.gov. I'm Ronnie Camille. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, be well.